monthly meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Park District order Tuesday, June 9th at 5:31 p.m. We've got a mixture today. We've got in the building we have Commissioners Stacy Griggs and Joe Deutsch. On the line we have Commissioner Vicki Dawson, and we're tentative on Commissioner Kopacek. Are you on, Rusty? I know he was dealing with a personal issue this afternoon and wasn't sure if he could make it. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Make motion to approve the minutes for the main meeting.
Second.
Mr. Dawson, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Approval of the May bills. Do we have a motion on the May bills?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. We got to call a vote on this one, yeah.
Right. Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted.
Yes. Commissioner Kopacek, are you on yet? All right. Approval of the order of the agenda, item number 3. Do we have any additions, deletions, or changes?
No changes, Mr. President.
Okay.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Moving to item number 5, Director's Report. Mr. Leaker.
Any recognition of audience?
I'm sorry, I'm going to pass that. Recognition of audience. We do have some people in the audience today. I recognize a couple of baseball people, Jeff Gould and Alex Mike. I'm sorry, Alex. Who else? Eloise is here.
Mike.
Okay, Mike Milan. Oh, great. Welcome, Mike.
And Roger Cluck and Nathan Borboom with City of Fargo Engineering.
Okay, great.
I think that's everybody.
All right. Sorry, Alex, you're going to have to get even.
Take my airtime now. There goes that.
I hope he voted already.
What was that? Alex Mind?
Sumner.
No, Mind, what was it? What did you say, what was your last name?
No, I was at Mind Blank.
Oh, Mind.
I
was going for that.
Alex Mind. All right, now director's report. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, we just wanted to give, we reviewed our capital project request form and process at the facilities committee meeting, and we had 3 commissioners there. So basically just wanted to update Commissioner Deutsch and who else? Stacy. Oh, so basically updating, since Rusty is not available, Joe, we put together our facility request form, and it kind of came about with working with Fargo Youth Baseball when they presented us their request to build a clubhouse out at the Star Young Complex. And we just wanted to make sure, after talking to some of the commissioners and other directors, that we had a process where an outside group or organization could make a request to the Park District. And we put together a process that they make that request to the Park District reviews it internally with the directors. We kind of vet it in-house. We ask them if they have any questions. We have a meeting, set up a meeting as we did with Fargo Youth Baseball. And then kind of once we get all of our questions answered, we work through that over the process of a year and then incorporate it into our long-range capital plan. And once it's thoroughly vetted, and at that time, we have the ability for the commissioners to review it and either work it into the capital plan or, we don't work it into the capital plan. And then that's kind of the first step of the budget process. And then we get another shot at it. What's the priority of that, and do we end up funding it for the following year? So we reviewed that process very thoroughly. Kevin Bowe, I believe, is on the line. And if there's anything maybe I left out, Kevin, you can fill in. But I think it's going to work very good. It's on our website, and some of the commissioners asked we could set it up in SharePoint so we had a tracking process and they could check in and find out the status of different requests or what requests are out there. We're currently working on that right now. So Kevin, is there anything to add on your behalf?
Yeah, so the only thing I would add is really this will help when, whether it's commissioners or staff out in the field and somebody happens to bring up a project or something they would like to see in the park district, we can actually send them to our website. So if you're on the Fargo Parks website, at the very bottom, it's under forms, and then it's the capital project process. So it's pretty easy to get to. You know, once we get to the new website in November, it'll be even a better access to that and a little bit smoother transition. But that's all I would need to add for that.
And maybe one thing to add on to that, you know, requests can be made to the park district at any level. I mean, they can bring it to an employee, a staff person, a director, or the commissioners. And I think working through this process, it allows everybody to kind of funnel it back through, you know, the staff, and where the commissioners aren't put on a spot. You know, they might say, yeah, it's a great idea, but we still would like you to work through the staff, get it into them. They can put it, you know, into the hopper, and that way we can track things. We can make sure it's a nice orderly process. So I think it's a very good way we have set up. So any questions from commissioners? Next item, and unfortunately Commissioner Popacek is unable to attend. This will be his last board meeting, and he served 1 4-year term, and basically just wanted to recognize Rusty for his 4 years of service at the Fargo Park District. So as I said, unfortunately he's not able to attend, but we will get a, you know, an outing or a gathering together, you know, and thank him, you know, for his service. So in talking with them, he wanted to push that off probably later this summer once the COVID thing winds down a little more. So next item, also somebody attending their last commission meeting. Just want to acknowledge Clay Whittlesey. He's was formerly our recreation director and currently our special events director. And come this July will be his 30th year of service at the Fargo Park District. So we just want to honor Clay for his 30 years, and we will be having an open house for him on Tuesday, June 30th at 10 a.m. So just FYI, everybody. So is Clay here, or is he virtual? He's virtual, so he was here earlier, so maybe just give Clay a round of applause since he's probably listening.
Just a quick comment on Clint. I'd like to say I remember him as a kid, but that might be a stretch. But he's been with the Park District a long time, and it's just you know, the wealth of knowledge that has accumulated over these years. It's hard to replace that. So wish him all the best in his retirement.
Clay, any parting words at your last commission meeting? Clay?
You came for dinner and then you left.
All right, maybe we should have given that a round of
He's
applause.
still digesting the dinner, yeah.
And then our last item, as everybody's seen the article in the Fargo Forum, we'd just like to recognize and congratulate Lisa Schwinden. Lisa became the one of only 12 current Minnesota section master professionals, one of only 12 current women master professionals nationwide, and the first woman master professional in Minnesota section after a year-long educational journey that started in January of 2019. So we'd just like to recognize Lisa for, you know, a very well-deserved recognition for something that not a lot of professionals have, and even fewer women have. So I'd just like to congratulate Lisa on that. Carolyn, anything you'd like to add?
It's quite an honor. So PGA members, she's one of 250 total PGA professionals who have achieved that, not to mention her achievements as a woman in the field. So we're very, very proud to have her on staff.
Absolutely. And while it's recognized as a master, it's probably more thoroughly reviewed as a doctorate. So it's kind of that level of a doctorate. So. All right, President Ross said that's all I have for the director's report.
All right, before we move to the foundation director's report, I forgot to ask, is anybody online that is a guest that we want to recognize or acknowledge? Okay, coming to the foundation. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few things I want to announce on behalf of the foundation. First of all, the foundation has not met since the month of February. But we are scheduled to meet next Monday, which will be a chance for us to kind of catch up with what's been going on foundation-wise. Among the items on the agenda are, first of all, an update on the sports complex. Secondly, we're going to talk about the next round of the grant match program. So if people that would like to apply for a grant through the Fargo Park District Foundation and the Fargo Park District are eligible to submit applications prior to July 1st. We've already had 2 people request application materials, so I know there's going to be some interest in this next round. Third, we're going to talk about the possibility of rescheduling the foundation golf tournament. That was supposed to be held a couple of weeks ago, but obviously got delayed because of what's going on. And then finally, we'll have a little bit of a report from Mike Erickson. Mike Erickson serves on the foundation board, also works for Sanford's, who of course is our major partner in the sports complex. So that's a little bit about what's going on with the foundation. Park District Foundation, the Valley Senior Services Foundation, just a little bit of an update there as well. As we've talked about in the past, the meals program is kind of going like gangbusters. Our numbers are up about 15% over what they were prior to the COVID-19 stuff. We served more meals in the month of April than in the history of our program. So a very significant jump in our numbers. At the same time, the number of volunteers we have is up in a substantial sort of way, which helps us keep up with the demand for delivery of Meals on Wheels, which has been great. Finally, we have received 3 significant grants for the Meals on Wheels program. 2 from Meals on Wheels America for a total of $95,000. And then a 3rd grant from the FMRA Foundation for $20,000. So a lot of support that is going to help us keep up with all of the growth in our Meals on Wheels program. So very appreciative from those organizations. We've received a number of individual donations as well. So it's really helping to make a major difference for us. So that's my report, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for either Sir Lee or Mr. Eric? No questions. Thank you, Brian. Moving on, item 7, board to discuss Fargo Moorhead Community Theater lease date leader presenting.
Commissioners, we just wanted to get this item back on the agenda due to the kind of time constraints associated with construction. We've talked about this for 2 facility committee meetings now and one commission meeting. And at our last facility committee meeting, we discussed, as you know, there's a large amount of information in the packet going back to basically the inception of Island Park back in the early 1900s, and then through all the different leases in 1966, then 84 and 94. But we've got some homework to do, some hurdles to cross regarding FMCT's request to expand into the park. After our last facility committee meeting, it was discussed about doing our due diligence about making sure we have the approval of the right-of-way in the city of Fargo, since when that original land was deeded to the city and then to the park district, the sole purpose was for park use. So we kind of left our facility committee meeting at that. Yeah, we still need to do some research, get the approval from the right-of-way or the railroad in the city of Fargo, but after thinking about it for a week or 2 and discussing with FMCT and LOEs, they have a need to get that roof repaired. Right now, there's a series of scaffolding in there that's it's unusable right now, and with winter's gonna be fast approaching, what we'd like to do, and we had a meeting, Commissioner Rosted, myself, and Eloise, yesterday, and what we'd like to do is, we realize we need to come up with a new agreement. There are some items that need to be addressed. The old agreement was basically month to month after its 20-year term. What we'd like to do is draft a new agreement, allowing them to repair their roof, and then also knowing that there's a liability out there if the railroad still needs to approve that encroachment into the park, put that liability back on FMCT in the agreement, so the park district isn't liable at all, and which would allow them to, secure bids and then start construction on their roof repair. So we want to separate the two items, and while FMCT would like to combine the two just for ease of construction, I think we need to separate the two, allow them to get going on their repair, and then in the meantime, we'll work through the railroad and the city of Fargo to see if that would be something that would be allowable on that encroachment into the park. And then it comes back to the park district to see if the park district and the park board would even allow that encroachment. There's people out there wholeheartedly for FMCT, and then there's also people that are behind Island Park and don't want any encroachment into the park. So there's several things we got to separate here, but I think tonight we'd like to direct our legal counsel to draft up an agreement relating to repair and of that roof. And then over the next month, as they work on that agreement, there might be some possible way that the railroad would come back and say, yeah, we're going to leave it up to interpretation of the board, how you define sole park purpose. And then at that time, if something like that would happen and they could move that quickly, then we could talk about incorporating, rewriting that agreement, and then the commissioners could take on that question. So I guess right now the question is to allow the attorney to draft an agreement to address repairing the roof. If that makes sense.
And Eloise, you're here. Do you have any comments that you'd like to make? If you do, for sake of hearing, if you could come up by the speakers, so.
Thank you.
And I don't know if Mike wants to make any comments as well.
Well, I'd just like to say the building has been there for 52 years. The wooden trusses broke. We really need to get that repaired. We have to order steel trusses, and it takes a minimum of 12 weeks to get them. So our goal has always been to get those trusses in and get it re-roofed by no later than mid-November. So it's at least a stable building over the winter months. So that's our request in doing this, is to be able to move forward in the land that we're currently at.
As Dave said, we met earlier this week, and it was a very good conversation, I thought. And I think that this certainly seemed like, we want to get you back on your feet and make sure that you're operating at where you were at before the roof caved in.
And what I would also like to add to that is every day that we're out of that building, we're losing money. Right now, we have leases at 3 different locations, trying to make up for the loss of that building. And even being in there and with COVID, and even not being able to put on a full production, it'd still be ahead of the game.
So it'd be a short-term lease, a 1-year lease, maybe better like stay for just to get through the current point, and then if we came to an agreement, it's 1-year lease, and we come to an agreement in 8 months or 6 months, we could just null and void that agreement and move forward with a new one, or how would that work?
Well, I think there's some significant risk. Obviously, I understand the time frame of what they're working with, but the issue now is that even on the existing footprint, the city and the railroad did not consent to that. So the issue is now, do they spend a significant amount of money on their building, even if it's just repairs, to get going and get back to it without having the consent of the city and the railroad? So from a board perspective, I think the most conservative approach is if they want to do that, they have to have the understanding at this point, if you're going to proceed, you're gonna hold harmless the park district and indemnify for any claims based off of that use restriction and any claim of violation. We're kind of starting at a new point here. You know, what was done in the past is done. The lease is really over. It's month to month. Now, if you want to make significant investment into that property and the board is willing to go forward, I think the whole idea is that we want to have those consents before we agree to it. But if they want to proceed, it's kind of at their own risk. And so I wouldn't, whether it's a year lease, but with the understanding that there's going to be a provision there that says this restriction is there and you're hold harmless and indemnify the park district for any claim relating to any violation of that. That's as to the existing footprint. And then the added part of it is if there is further expansion, that's again a consent that you'd have to get from the city and the railroad.
And how do you and your board feel about that prospect?
That's how I understood it when we talked about it yesterday.
Okay.
So if we did a lease for the existing footprint, which basically would allow them to rebuild the road, could we do something longer? Because frankly, I understand the risk. I get it. There's a risk there, but I wouldn't want to be the guy at the city or the guy at the railroad that says this is in violation. It's still after it's been there for 50 plus years. It just seems to me like it would be, I wouldn't want to be that person that would say, hey, that's got to go away. So I'm going to go with the assumption that they're fine where they're at. So could we do a longer lease, or do we need to do a minimal kind of lease? Because you could do an addendum if we down the road get the approvals and then do something to approve expansion. That would be an addendum to the original lease at that point.
Yeah, you can certainly do a lease, just so it's clear that you have that in there, that you're not getting the consent at this point. The issue is, you know, if they're gonna be expending significant funds into that building without having that assurance going into it, that's the concern. And then, assuming if we're gonna go down that road of saying, yes, we're gonna give the go-ahead, then there are other provisions within the lease that I think are worth considering. You know, for instance, what's the scope of the use? I don't know if you reviewed the current lease, is everybody on the board comfortable with the scope of the use of the lease going forward? What's the term? Are we talking 20 years, 30 years, 20 years with options to extend for 5 years? Parking, I know, has been brought up as far as an issue. Is that going to now be, right now, nothing's covered in the lease as far as the parking and what's happening there. Is that going to be part of the lease? So we can certainly prepare a longer term lease with the idea that basically the park board is washing its hands of any claims relating to the violation of the use restriction. But in addition to that, then I would want some direction as to some of these other points that you may want to look at the lease and say, hey, things have changed, we need to relook at this. Or if you're fine with it, that's fine as well. But we've talked about scope of use, parking. And to me, the scope of the use kind of gets back to when you're going to get consent, is that an issue that the city or the railroad is going to look at as far as, you know, is this something that's close to the park use that we intended, or how farther away does it get from that?
So Andy, this is Vicky, are you suggesting that whatever lease agreement we decide on possibly today, it would include parking and the scope of use?
I'm just saying, if I'm directed to prepare a lease, I would want some direction from the board as to, are those items things that should be incorporated or not? Because it's not my decision as to what the board wants to have within that new lease. Those are things that have just been brought up. Again, if you look at the use provision in the existing lease, it's basically park district hands-on. And I don't know if that's the same going forward for the next 20 or 30 years, or whatever you decide on the term. Are you comfortable with that? Is that consistent with what the types of leases that you've entered into?
Discussion?
Well, we have to find a solution because you have a building that is unusable.
Correct.
And whether, you know, the land was given through the city 100 years ago and the building's been there for 52 years. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an expert on any of this, but I can't imagine, I kind of sit with Gary, I can't imagine that the Northern Pacific Railroad gave the land, Burlington Northern bought the railroad, and probably, I don't know what kinds of records they have and how sticky they are with certain provisions on property that was given and how it was used. But I do understand that it's a big company and it could take months or possibly years for them to even care to look into the situation and and grant a and I understand the point of that, you know, it was given for park use, and that's open for interpretation.
Well,
No, I was just gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Mr. was just pointing out that if we do a long-term lease and then look at doing an addendum, well, if we choose not to allow the expansion, therefore the addendum doesn't happen, then he just wants to make sure that you're comfortable with the idea that there's no, you know, shared parking and that the scope of isn't defined in there because now we're re-locked in, whereas right now, while it's expired, we have that option.
Opportunity to update.
So, but in order to give them permission to move forward with the repair, do we have to redo the lease at the exact same time? Or is it just something that's important to get done as well?
Well, to me, it really comes down to FMCT. I mean, right now, you basically kind of have a month-to-month lease. And if you wanted to just say, hey, we're fine, conceptually, we're fine with you going and moving ahead with the understanding that there is this use restriction. You will hold us harmless from anything. And then once we get approval from the city and the BN, then you redo your lease at that time. You can certainly go that route. But I would want something in writing saying, conceptually, we're fine with you moving forward, because basically under the terms of their lease, they probably can go ahead and repair their building under the existing lease. It's just, they want to take the risk of spending funds into this building until there's some level of certainty.
And the city's non-support at this point is just simply because they haven't heard back from the railroad yet, so they're not going to.
I don't know if anybody's made contact with the city or the railroad yet.
The railroad I reached out to last week, I heard back from one of the people immediately saying, I'll take a look at this next week. So they received it last Friday. She said she was going to look at it. If we don't hear anything in 2 weeks' time, then we'll start contacting them and following up on it.
Remind me, how long have we been month to month on with the lease
I
already?
think it was originally 1966, and it was a 20-year lease, I believe.
So 86.
34 years we've been month to month?
So, I mean, that's a good point, Dr. Joe. So we could stay with the existing lease. And what brought this all up was, how do we handle the insurance check? It's kind of what started everything. But if we stuck with the original lease, and then would we just need a side agreement and it just resolving us of any liability?
I think we could do just a letter agreement that basically addresses that.
Maybe that's the easiest way to do it.
Eloise, did you know you were month to month for the past 34 years?
I have no idea.
You're gonna sleep better.
So I'm wondering, are we actually month to month? Because I don't know that I read that anywhere. And then my other question is, it talks about if there's substantial damage to the building. So I think continuing to utilize what we have is probably not our best plan. I'd be more inclined to suggest we have something short-term put together so at least the roof can get taken care of. I do want to address the scope of use and the parking lot at some point. I don't know if we put that in this lease or if we address it going forward. a separate add-on or what we do?
Well, it's not that we can't begin immediately having those conversations, but, you know, but to rush the lease now, I mean, to do it in conjunction with that, I mean, like Mr. Ross had just said, we've survived 34 years without any issues, and I'm not saying they're not gonna come, but the point of the matter is let's start immediately working towards having those discussions of what that lease is gonna look like and move forward with it, but I don't know that we have to wait to give them, to say that we will allow them to move forward with their roof, and it sounds to me like Eloise is still, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's still trying to get the approval of the railroad, and they're putting some pressure on them to get an answer, and they would like to maybe get approval and then the next day do it, and if they have to wait to come back to us again, because now we've got, you know, it just pushes their timeline down the road, so I
Well,
support.
I'm not suggesting we wait for railroad or the city. I'm just suggesting that we put in place a valid lease at this time that would be short term, that would allow them to repair the roof, and then at a future date, whether we make it a 6-month lease, whatever it might be, then that gives us time to build a longer term permanent lease, a longer term lease that could include the scope of use and the parking lot or the parking situation. That's just a suggestion on my part. Andy, what are your thoughts on that?
I guess I'd be more inclined to do a shorter, maybe a 1-page, just kind of addendum to the existing lease to keep that in place. Again, I'm just gonna be honest, I guess there's a higher level of uncertainty with the amount that's going to be invested in this property, and I don't want, from the board's perspective, some type of assurance created by allowing that this is gonna happen, because there is historical precedent for the city and the railroad on encroachment agreements with the Island Park that they have not signed up. So that's the issue that I'm concerned about.
And I think that's why we're clearly separating these two things, because I haven't even began to go down the road of leveraging a thought on that whole situation. So that's why I like to separate them completely, and that's why our lawyers get paid the big bucks, so they can write the language up. But I mean, I think everybody's supportive of the fact that the language is going to be clear as can be, that this is a risk that they're choosing to take on their own, and that it has nothing to do with their proposed project that includes the encroachment and the expansion and the expansion of their school.
Yeah, no, I think that gives the theater what they need to do to move forward, but I think gives the park district kind of a non-committal position. Go ahead, somewhat at your full risk, and we'll move forward as things clarify a little bit.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So we need to move to approve.
So what would you call this document?
Maybe a short addendum to the existing lease that would, include this acknowledgement of the use restriction, the hold harmless indemnity provision, and we could set a time frame for how long it would last, with the idea that, hey, if we haven't gotten to the point where we've got the consents, that at that point you could relook at it and extend it further.
So what would be an appropriate time from a lawyer's perspective? 6 months, year?
Sometimes the railroad doesn't move fast, so, whether it's, you put at 6 months with the option to extend by the agreement of the parties based off of getting these consents.
So move, Jeff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I'd like to say, I just want to see the theater get its roof.
Yes, I
And
That's the number one mission, I think, for everybody at this point. So,
And legal stuff, that's gotta follow, but if you've been month to month for 34 years, now we're gonna go 6 months to 6 months for how many years? I hope it's not long. I hope we can get this solved sooner rather than later, maybe within, the fortune rains down and in the next few weeks, we get clarity from the railroad. I'm sure the city of Fargo will be right there as well, and then we can revisit the rest of this, so.
Thank you.
So Andy, is this something that you would write up and then we would read it and vote on it? Or are we considering that approval without seeing it? Where do we go from here?
I guess that's up to the board whether you want to pass a resolution as to whether you want to see and approve the actual document before it goes into effect, or whether the resolution in of itself would be satisfactory.
I mean, to expedite the process, it'd be nice to be able to approve it contingent on our attorney drafting it up and then signing it as soon as possible so they could get going, but.
So Anthony, does that seem like a reasonable decision?
I think given the limited scope of what we're doing, I think it's reasonable, given that, I mean, if the board understands essentially the time frame, the use restriction, the hold harmless indemnity, that's really the basis of the agreement. And as long as the resolution is that, in consulting with me as well as the executive director, as long as we come up with an agreement that includes those provisions, that, you know, Dave's authorized to sign that.
Okay.
Is that part of Commissioner Deutsch's motion, Jeff?
It is. Got it all.
So moved, Jeff.
One thing I would ask is just to hopefully move the process along as to how the involvement of the review of these other provisions would be done, so that we don't just get to that point and we start from there. So if there's, whether it's board discussion and maybe Dave discussion with, I don't know, but that would certainly move that process along, that especially on the scope and the parking issues would be two big issues. And then the third part of it is, okay, are we going to look at expansion? Are we agreeable to that? I think those discussions need to start happening so that we're, you know, we can try to move it along as quick as possible.
My direction would be the staff at Dave's level or below, and then bring it back to the board for review.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been working with the city, you know, Donald Cress on, you know, parking, they'll look at that. So.
Any other discussion? Jeff, full board.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted.
Yes, the motion passes. Thanks, Eloise.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing more of you, I think.
Yes, you will.
Thank you. By the way, nice article in the marketing team, she shared that with me.
Oh, thank you.
I like that a lot. Nicely done. All right, item number 8, board to consider approval, for approval request for Fargo baseball, Alex Sumner and Jeff Gould to construct a clubhouse at Starry Field Big League Field.
Okay, I'll just give them a quick overview and then Alex and Jeff can jump in if I miss anything. Fargo Youth Baseball is requesting permission to build a clubhouse out at the Starry Field Complex, and as shown in some of the attachments, they'd be located in that southwest corner of the southeast parking lot on 42nd Street out there. One thing that helped us expedite this was that they are not asking for any funding from the park district, just permission to construct this clubhouse. They've got 100% of their funding. They are trying to take advantage of some construction savings due to a contractor having freed up some time. So, you know, when reviewing it with staff, we've met with Alex, we've met with Ryan, we've met with Jeff. We think it's a good project. You know, we had some questions on the actual location. Could they move it closer in towards the field? And due to some storm, sewer, and drainage issues, that this was probably the best place to locate it. We do lose a couple parking stalls, but I think in the overall purpose of the park, it's a good cause, and it helps add something to that complex out there. So if you guys want to add anything, Alex?
Sure.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, the growth that we've made over that's been with the help of our partners. Park District is a huge asset to our organization as well as post-career baseball program. And our numbers are just growing. From the post-career side of things, they had enough kids to fill 4 teams this year. And so with that being said, they need more place for these players to get dressed, get ready for the games, and just overall better experience for these kids. And I know you mentioned about the parking lot, and you know, one thing that I'm talking about Tyler Kirshner and those guys is just access getting out of the parking lot. But we have a plan in place, so basically where we would get arrows, we can get arrows set out for direction to make sure that it's not going to be too much of a hassle and that the flow of traffic is going to go well too. So,
yeah, I mean, it just gives us access to, what is it, 36, 40 more locker rooms for the kids, game room, we've got storage, you know, a whole bit there, just try to, you know, give a better experience, obviously, not only for Post 400, but obviously for, there's youth tournaments, you know, we had 16 teams from the cities and all over, you know, this weekend, which was fantastic. You know, just giving them better access to stuff. We have the exits, we talked with Dave, the exits are how they are east of the entry and the one-way, and then the other, I guess would be the west entrance, would give us access to the batting cages that are right there and the other stuff. So, you know, people might be questioning that, but there's a method to our madness, just trying to.
There's no filming or anything like
Yeah.
that in there, so, but, you know, Vicky Dawson's saw his change in the concession stand. So let's give him a locker and get ready for games,
So, and that's why we went with that. There were a couple other things we looked at, but unfortunately, we would have messed up with all the electrical and plumbing and stuff. So we kind of went with this because it's also higher up, so we don't have to bring in a bunch of fill and you know, we'd rather spend $50,000 on the kids than $50,000 and bring a dirt bag.
And I don't know if Kevin or Dave were kind of part of the discussions. We've had a good partnership with Fargo Youth Baseball. They brought baseball a long way in a short time. They've, you know, helped consolidate Babe Ruth baseball and Fargo and Little League baseball all under one roof. So it's been a good thing. They, you know, we started out with a great relationship with Babe Ruth at Brunsdale, and now we've got, you know, some Little League complex and now Star So it's been a good partnership.
No, I always appreciate when you go raise your own money and you involve the park district in your planning processes and everything. So it's not, oh, here's our plan, drops it on us and now we've got to either, you know, be on board or not on board. So really appreciate you guys doing that. My son loves to play on the wiffle ball fields over there. So he brings all his buddies and comes over. And so that's a neat little complex. And it just you know, builds that whole baseball from 6 years old all the way up through high school. The kids are in the batting cages and yelling to our kids to hit dingers and just making the baseball fun. So get more.
yeah, and thanks for the program too and what you did for us with the KFGO thing. That was amazing. That's something those kids will never forget. And Jack Michaels and Peggy Camp, I mean, it's beautiful. So thanks for setting that up.
Yeah, I got a phone call from Joel Heidkamp one day. He says, Joey, I'm here. Jack Michaelson, we got an idea. And I said, what's that? He goes, what are you sitting listening to reruns of Twins games on KFGO? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, what if we do Little League in America nights? And we just started bringing the cruiser around and so yes, I started doing Little League and calling these games on the radio as if they were high school or college kids or pros. And so I heard the first game went well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
So no, like I said, I appreciate. I mean, you can't go wrong when you bring the money to the table yourself and you involve the park district in your planning. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing for baseball and the relationship and I'm fully supportive of the projects.
This is Vicky. I missed whatever comment you made about my kid in the concession stand, so I don't know what that was. Hopefully it was harmless. It's better than the beer garden, I guess. And then I have a question to someone with the Park District. The agreement that's in the packet looks to be the original agreement from May of 2018. Is there another agreement for the building that we should have in here?
Well, I mean, when they first had the concept for Starion, they kind of listed what they thought was their master plan. And then there was kind of a caveat up there and other uses or something. And so we just thought with a addition this size that, you know, we should probably just bring it in front of the board for approval. I don't know if we necessarily, I mean, they're still responsible for ensuring it and maintaining it, as with anything with Starion.
Well, and so do we need an agreement specifically for this building, similar to we would for maybe the curling club or any other building on our property, in addition to this original agreement from 2018? That's just my question.
I haven't reviewed, this is Andy, I haven't reviewed the existing agreement, but you certainly could just do an addendum to that if it would fit to add that as
An additional amenity.
right.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I just think for both parties, you want to have something in here that states we have a building of a significant size, of significant value that's part of this. Otherwise, I think it's fantastic, and I'll be ready to bring my my bag and cleats and bat and find my locker.
I'll be in the beer garden, Mickey.
I've got all my baseball eligibility left, so I'm good.
I marvel at what you guys are doing out there, so I'm fully behind it, so. Jeff, full board.
I want to let people talk without just making a motion, so I'll move to approve as presented, with the addendum if deemed necessary.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other conversation? All right, now we can vote.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch. Aye. Commissioner Rosted.
Yes. 4-0, motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you guys, really
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Equipment out there waiting to get started, or what? How soon will you get
Yeah,
going?
kids playing now, y'all know we're gonna start. Yep. I'm making a phone call on the way over there. We got other things we wanna do out there, we'll let you know. No doubts of that. Ryan's got an appointment next week, I think, already. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie.
Appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, we move on to item 9. We got the last set of visitors here to consider for approval the alterations to the agreement with the City of Fargo for land at the Northside Softball Complex to accommodate the Northside Flood Risk Management Project. Dave Dietz, you're the presenter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioners, in your packet is information regarding a change to the current lease that we have with the City of Fargo. We have leased the ground from the city where the Northside Softball Complex resides. They've got a project on the north side of town. It's a Northside Flood Risk Management Levy. And what they're looking to do is to put a levy on the north side of the Northside Softball Complex. From the Park District's perspective, there's some important things we wanted to make sure they've addressed, which they have. One of those was being the installation of a gate well or a way to prevent floodwaters from coming in. The levee is there to protect the city, and in this instance, our infrastructure and all of our assets, if you will, are on the protected side. So we wanted to make sure that there was a gate well there to protect any water from coming into the complex. And we also wanted to make sure that, you know, there was effective drainage to make sure that any water that we get through precipitation or other means internal would have a way to still escape. So we found that. There was another consideration they had to make in the alignment of the levee. On the north side of the complex, we've got a sanitary pump station there. They have moved the alignment of their levee or taken that into account and made sure that that lift station will not be impacted by this project. In further conversations with them, we wanted to make sure that, you know, right now on the north side, we don't have any specific plans to build anything there. In our master plan that we had approved through city planning, we do have it kind of designated as another athletic use, if you will. So we worked with them and you know, it's softball through and through right now. So we just kind of laid out what it would look like if there were additional pods that would be constructed on that north side. And so they've worked with us and kind of went with us with the alignment of the levee. So that was taken into consideration. Another consideration we had is in the future, when we were to build that area out, we'd have a parking lot on that north side. So how would we access that? We would have access from the north off of 64th Avenue. That would be an up and over essentially of the existing levee. In your packet is information. Basically, we're looking for to give them consent to do this and modify the lease that gives them the ability to notify that we are aware that they're constructing this levee. There's another consent agreement in there that basically is consenting to the temporary construction easement, and then basically just the declaration of the easement itself. So all that information is in there. We do have two guests in audience today. Nathan Borboom and Roger Cluck are both with City Engineering. So we'd be happy to try and field any questions you may have on this project.
Well, this was discussed at facilities and it seemed pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions?
As long as the staff is comfortable with the proposal and how it moves forward for future plans, I'm comfortable with the city.
Yeah, it's kind of a, you know, with all the flood mitigation, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's here to protect the city and protect us, so.
All right, well, I will move to approve as presented.
Second? Any further discussion? Vicki, do you have anything?
Nope. Seems
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
All right. Jeff, take the vote.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted.
Yes. Put an hour of your time in, not the question, but 2 minutes.
All right.
Better to be here and answer the question than
Means you
not.
did your work the right way the first time. Nobody asked questions, right?
We got the urban bowline coming in, Nathan. You're an archery guy.
I know we'll be there.
Okay.
Okay, item number 10, board to consider approval 2019-2020 Fargo Wildlife Management Program and request continuation for the following season. Officer Marvin is on the phone, on the line.
Are you out there, Josh?
Good evening. Yeah, can you hear me, Leaker?
You're up.
Hello?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay. Good evening. Nothing too earth-shattering here. We went through this together last year. We had a good year. Some minor violations of program rules, but no reports or founded things of like baiting or criminal violations, wanton waste, any of that stuff. We modified our training this year. We did have our first session last night of the actual proficiency. We're still requiring them to come in and do modified testing to show that they can, you know, shoot a bow and arrow safely and accurately. We did that last night, and we'll do that again next Monday. So basically, we've got the stats there and stuff. We're continuing to see average numbers and taking deer out of the city. So we'll keep using the parks, and I don't believe there's anything too earth-shattering. The map there, we got the questions, as it said, about kind of where does Orchard Glen end, where does Forest River start, should we be hunting around these houses, or, you know, even if the law says we can, does that mean we should? And so Beats and I worked together, and we just very clearly laid out where we want them hunting. keep them away from some of that residential stuff out there and to provide guidance for the hunters.
Well, this program's been around as long as I have, which is 14 plus years. Clay got it started at one time, and I remember, you know, in the beginning, there was concerns with days of the week that it was gonna be and what time they could be out there and everything, because I think people were worried that this was, you know, recreational hunters. These people are professionals at what they do, and they do this as an opportunity to get out but as a public service to the community. And we've had no issues that I've ever known about or since that time that it was questioned. And if you look at the number of deer that are harvested, and you hear the complaints from my parents, number one, about their bushes getting yanked in the middle of the night and whatever else. And you know, I appreciate, you know, obviously this is evolved to the point where Officer Myron's handling that, you know, whether or not people can shoot accurately or not. But I just want to commend the program and know that, you know, it's one of those things that has a zero tolerance for any issues, because if there is an issue, it's going to open doors of questions, comments, and complaints. And none of that I can aware of. So, good program. Commend you for keeping it as professional as it is, because it's very, very important that it does that.
Yeah, the program's been really good. Last night, the longest we heard somebody waited to sign up was 6 minutes. So we believe that this year's program filled in under 10 minutes. So these people definitely care about it and are ready and preparing each year to be in this program.
I was going to say, if we're going to discuss foliage being destroyed, I'd like to add rabbits to this. But in all seriousness, though, back to what Commissioner Deutsch said, remind me, we do, you know, this has been around forever, and people maybe moved into within the past few years. We market for on an annual basis so that if somebody doesn't see something coming out of the woods with a bow and arrow or whatever, and we don't know what's going on. I mean,
We have signage at all of our park locations. And I don't know what the distance between signs is, typically 100 yards. Josh, do you know? I mean, at the end.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Some of that cut out for me.
Commissioner Rosso was just asking about if new people move into the area, how are they aware of our urban archery season? And I said we sign the parks where we allow the hunting, you know, at typically all the entrances, and then if it's a long stretch behind the residential area, we'll put them every so many 100 yards, and I don't know what that distance is. Dave, do you know, Beats?
I believe it's, boy, I don't. I was gonna take a guess there. I thought I really don't.
Well, we can check on that. I mean, we sign it very well.
I move that we approve the 2021 season Fargo Wildlife Management Program.
Second.
Give it to Vicky.
All right.
Any other discussion?
Yes, I want to know if we approve this, if somebody will come and get all the turkeys out of my yard.
Well, and I'll step in for Clay here because I've heard this several times. When you bow hunt for deer, you can pattern the deer. They're creatures of habit. They walk down the same trails. They come out at night. Boom, boom, boom. Right spot to shoot them. Turkeys, in the spring you can pattern turkeys, but in the fall they just kind of wander aimlessly. So while we do have it's tough to pattern. It's very low.
I'm just teasing. I'm just fine. I think it's great we have wildlife wandering around once in a while, but it's nice to have this going and help keep some control as well.
All right, let's take a vote now.
Commissioner Dawson,
Sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch?
Aye.
Commissioner Ossted?
Yes. Item number 11, board to consider for approval agreement between the Park District and WKY Trail Builders. Dave Leaker presenting.
Thank you, President Rosted. This one is just an ongoing extension of a collaboration we had with the FM Trail Builders who came to the Park District probably 4 or 5 years ago. While they're the FM Mountain Biking Club and known as the Trail Builders, we don't have any mountains within several hundred miles of the city of Fargo, but there is some topography down by the river, and that's typically where most of their single track trails are located. They actually got their start over in Moorhead and did a very good job in Moorhead. And so they did such a good job that they wanted to expand over to Fargo. We talked to the city of Moorhead and Moorhead Parks and Recreation. They confirmed they've done a great job. We started down at Trefoil Park, and that's kind of where they got their start. Now they've just been gradually going further south of Island Park, south of Island Park down by 52nd Avenue, and now they're working their way north. And as part of this agreement, we have an agreement with the FM Trail Builders to build, construct, and maintain these trails. What this agreement is an agreement between the Park District and then the different entities if we don't own that land. So currently, right now, we have 3 entities that we have agreements with, and they are the Catholic Health Initiative, which is just directly south of 52nd Avenue. We've got an agreement with the city of Fargo for some of their buyout lots, and now this will be our 3rd partner in this with Forum Communications. As they want to extend their trails further north, we cross public and private property, and us being a government agency, it's easier for us to get an agreement with these private companies. You know, they know we're solvent, they know we do a good job, and then in turn we sublease it to the FM Trail Builders. So this is just a continuation of what we've done in the past, and the one we're discussing tonight is FM or Forum Communications or WDAY, and it's just north. If you look on the aerial up there, the Rose Creek Coulee, that's South University Drive, running north and south. So you can see the levee where the line, they've got their tower there, and everything is basically on the west side of the levee. So I've been working with Josh at Forum Communications. They've actually sent over the signed agreement. So if this is approved from our commission, we'll be able to sign that, and the FM Trail Builders would be able to start constructing trails ASAP. So anyhow, take any questions you might have. And while these are single track bike trails, they are also walking trails for walkers and birders. So it works both ways. And fat tire biking trails in the wintertime. So they're doing all the work, they're maintaining it, so it's just a good partnership for us. And there's times that if they have a down tree or something, we'll bring in our maintenance department or our forestry crews to cut those trees up.
All right, well, it sounds pretty straightforward, and the model's already out there, so I will move to approve the agreement between Fargo Park District and WDAY regarding that trail builders as presented.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Actually, I'd like to invite somebody in from FM Trail Builders at one of our next meetings just to give them a chance to thank them for all their work. It's a great partnership. Jeff, down a full board.
Commissioner Dodson?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch? Commissioner Ossted?
Yes. Item 12, board to consider for approval, section 5339 federal transit funding resolution for senior services. Paul Pringle, and is he on the line?
I am, sir. I am President Rosted, Commissioners. I am here. Both of my items tonight pertain to our transportation services that Valley Senior Services provides. And just a quick review, those services include public transportation and a senior ride service. And those all happen in at least parts of 8 counties in southeastern North Dakota. And as I go through this, I'd be happy to answer any questions about our transit service. But the first item, number 12, I'm looking for approval of an authorizing resolution so that we can apply for some funding to replace some vehicles in our public transit service. DOT requires we have this resolution, have my name on it so that I'm allowed to execute and file any documents for the funding. We're looking to replace 3 transit vehicles, one for Steele County, one for Cass County, and one for Sargent County. So if you have any questions or like me to explain a little further, I certainly can.
I always like when you come to Paul and we talk about, most people come to us and ask for money.
Right.
You always have to come to us to ask for approval to submit for funding from somebody else. And
exactly.
With the notion that it's always going to be granted, you just need to get our approval.
Exactly.
To get our approval at a time. So
I'm a favorite.
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion to approve the section 5339 federal transit funding resolution as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Jeff, take the roll, please.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted.
Yeah. Move to item 13. Alderman, we're on the clock here again. Board to consider for approval revisions to Valley Senior Services drug and alcohol policy.
Thank you, President Rosted. This item is really approval that we're looking for every 3 years. Valley Senior Services has a drug and alcohol testing policy in place. It covers all of our drivers and dispatchers that are related to our public and our senior ride transportation services. Again, DOT requires that the board review this every 3 years. And what I've done this year, I had to make one change to one word based on a federal ruling. So on page 8 of the policy, you'll see that, I don't know if that's up on the screen, page 8, there it comes. There are, and you can see highlighted there, we crossed out first is the word opiates, and we had to use opioids, more colloquial term for that drug. So that is the only substantive change in the policy. The other thing I've done is I've just taken the same policy we've had and I've used a template that DOT provided for us. So it just looks a little bit different, but no change in substance to the policy at all. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the policy. Again, just looking for approval every 3 years.
If there's no questions, I move that we approve the Valley Senior Service Transit drug and alcohol policy as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? So is there a difference between opiates and opioids? I mean,
No, what it said in the final rule that they just wanted more of a colloquial description of that drug, and opioids is a word that everybody knows. Opiates is not used as often as the word opioids. So it's just kind of an understanding and clarification kind of word.
And Opie is Andy Griffith's son, right? Just to clarify that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I was gonna say, as long as we're only using the word and not the actual things, we're interchangeable.
No, we're against the use of those by our transit drivers and dispatchers. So no, we're not gonna, no plans to use it.
Jeff, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted.
Yes. And number 4, the board to consider for
Thank you.
approval agreement. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Item 14, board to consider for approval lease agreement with Chisholm. Kevin Volk presenting.
Good evening, commissioners. So on your screen is a letter from Charism that talks about the merger with the Boys and Girls Club. There's also the agreement it was not in your packet, but it's on the screen with the Charism. That's a current agreement. The termination of the lease agreement with Charism, a new lease agreement with the Chisholm Housing Group, a map of the park to give you a reference. So this was discussed at the Facilities Committee back in May. So this month in June, Charism will be merging with the Boys and Girls Club and no longer exist as a 501c3 organization. So all their after school program, their summer programs, as well as the entire organization will be absorbed under the Boys and Girls Club of the Red River Valley. So Charism is working closely with these community homes management company Chisholm to take over the feeding program that they have being in the leased building at McCormick Park. So in the new agreement, it would be a year-to-year with a 3-month notification to terminate that lease. It's a huge rent of $1 per year for that rent. The tenants will provide coverage for insurance at $1 million policy. They'll be responsible for the inside of that building. The Park District, as standard, will handle the exterior of that building. I don't know if Thad is in the audience. Our attorney Thad has been involved with the meetings with Charism, Chisholm staff to work on the new agreement. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for Kevin?
Kevin, what are they using the building for?
They distribute food out of that building from the gardens that are there at McCormick Park.
So what do they use it for the other 10 months?
They used to have programs that are operated out of there. They will no longer obviously be absorbed. So all those programs will be at the locations of the Boys and Girls Club.
Sure.
So I don't know if this needs to be in 2 motions, since we need one, we need to terminate the lease with Charism since they're no longer going to be an organization, and then 2, to have an agreement or agree to the agreement with the Chisholm Housing Authority.
So if I understand this correctly, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, it's really just an administrative detail that we're taking care of here, right? We just, one organization's going away and the other one's replacing it. It's, the services are gonna be the same, it's just different leadership.
Correct. That's correct.
All right, we have a motion or any further conversation?
Well, I would make a motion to change our lease agreement from Charism to Chisholm based on the merger of the Boys and Girls Club of America. So making a response to meal distribution from the community gardens at McCormick Park.
Second.
Now I know why there was a delay, that was a lot.
It was much better than what I would have done. Approved lease agreement, which is very detailed, so I appreciate it.
Very good. Any other discussion? Jeff, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Dawson?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch? Aye. Commissioner Rosted?
Yes. Item 15, board to consider for approval amendment to lease with Edgewood Tavern. Carolyn McCain presenting.
Commissioners, in your packet is a amendment to the lease with Edgewood Tavern, who we just started working with here this spring. The current lease requires that the tenant pay for Wi-Fi services independent of the Fargo Park District. In doing research for that, it was found by the tenant that would create a hardship as far as a more than $1,000 investment in setting up a separate Wi-Fi. And so they asked for consideration for that change in the lease, that they would get a separate, basically we split the internet Wi-Fi services out there. They would pay their half of it, and they have also agreed to pay the upfront costs for making that change happen, and then also additional payments for equipment like wireless access points and the firewall that were needed to separate things out and make sure both were private and that we wouldn't have any shared services that way. And then in the future, if there would be some specific needs that a corporate technologies, our IT provider would have to come on site for them specifically, they would then pay those fees as well. And so again, it's more housekeeping to make sure that we are reflecting in our lease and our agreements what we are actually doing. This was discussed at the facilities committee meeting and decided to bring forward in hopes that the board would approve it tonight.
So I have one question then afterwards. Will there be any liability? Let's just, you don't want to see this happen, but if, let's say they close down and we've got a year-long lease, but they leave after 6 months, are we on the hook at all for that, or is that, how is that?
I would have to look to see if it's addressed in the lease in any way at this time.
Well, is the bill, I mean,
the bill is based on the monthly charges that come up. So if it ends up that that particular service is cut in half, that we cancel it or whatever, the same things would apply. They would be obligated to pay up to whatever was used. Because again, it's a service that we have control over at this time.
everything just continue.
But they're not adding any physical plant to bring and enhance services out there.
No, other than the rented pieces, the access point and the, which again, they service fee for, in order in case we would have it long enough that it would need replacement.
I don't think that we have any liabilities, we may just leave and go, but, you know, I understand why it was written the way it was originally, to try to create total separation, but I also understand their position, and I'm just so happy about the fact that they're out there and making this commitment, and I guess it's fair to say that it was presented to us in a fashion that we didn't necessarily think there would be all that much interest out there over the last so many years. Anything we can do within reason to make their moving in and they're hopefully setting a long-term shop success, the better we can be.
So Carolyn?
Yeah. Yes,
doing this, Fargo Parks would incur no additional costs if we do this. It would be, the Edgewood Tavern people would absorb the additional expense we would incur?
Correct. They have agreed to pay the upfront costs of installing it, the monthly fees of having that service available, and then any additional fees that would be incurred because something went wrong, is broken, needs to be repaired.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
Well, I don't want my comments to be misunderstood. I want to do what we can to help them too. I just want to ask that question.
No, and that's a fair question to ask. I mean, and by asking it, it definitely clears up the fact that whatever it's going to cost to set this up, they're paying for up front. And if they, for some reason, did leave, they end their services and we're not stuck with anything. So that's a good question, because it was kind of I'll move to approve the amendment to the lease at the Edgewood Tavern as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further conversation? Jeff, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes. Item number 16, board to consider for approval proposed golf fees for 2021. Carolyn, you're on the docket.
Attached in your packet is the proposed fees for 2021 for the fall season. What we do annually is review the seasons, again, fall has been somewhat affected by COVID, but not extensively, where we were able to start the end of April. We've been able to offer a lot of the same services, maybe with some restrictions, again, for social distancing, and to be able to make sure it's safe and that things are clean. And so, again, moving forward, we wanted to look at the fees and the structure that we have, and talking with the business office, Tyson has determined that the CPI, which is our normal standard of increases, is at 1.2%. And so the golf staff and the business office got together and has proposed that the fees would then be reflecting that 1.2% increase for 2021. And we also have plans at the end of the season to reflect on what happened with COVID, how it affected golf, and where we went ahead with maybe some of the standards to make sure that if we see significant change with season pass holders or with the rounds that are offered or in any of the other services, that we take some time to see how that may need more adjustment for 2021. But at the bare minimum, we would like to make sure that we do take advantage of the 1.2%. And all of those fees have been then rounded up to the nearest 0 or 5 based on previous commission's request.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anybody have any questions? Discussion?
I think it'll be really interesting
Carolyn,
to see how things were affected, what we learned and what we're gonna continue to do moving forward, and whether it's like cleanliness portion or operations. I think that's gonna be an interesting year to compare this year to last year. Numbers and practice.
It's funny, I was talking to Matt Cook yesterday, and we were having that same conversation that some of the COVID things that have been instituted are working really well, and we'll just want to do them continue.
Right, but automation of it and, the ease of use and just a lot of different things and how they operate, season passes versus individual passes versus corporate events. I think there's a lot to be learned from this, beyond how to stay alive.
There's a certain amount of technology that, is necessary to operate at your best function without necessarily having to go too far. And I think a lot of people were just closed-minded to that, and it was okay to be closed-minded to that because I'm not, I don't want to worry about that. And so it forced people to get to that level where they could function again, which was taking steps that you hadn't taken before. And as you stated, I think once you get comfortable with it, you realize it actually made life a little easier once you're comfortable with the technology portion of it, and some people won't go back, which I think is healthy. I also just want to point out that there still is no better value out there than golfing in the Fargo Park District. I mean, round the golf season passes in relation to what it costs us to staff and maintain and everything else in the parks, the golf courses, it's a heck of a deal. So I appreciate your hard work on that. We'll move to approve the season golf pass as presented for 2021.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
so Carolyn, if I understand you correctly, this is based on the CPI, and you are reserving the option that we may need to look at these before we get to next season based on what's going on with COVID and potential additional expenses. Would that be correct?
Right, we're not saying we would take the fee down, but we want to take a look at how the fees are structured because some are dependent upon certain percentages. And we may want to look at that and say, we had a whole lot more season passes in this level, and is that reflected properly in the fees that are there?
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yep, call the vote, please.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted.
Yes. Item 17, board to review and discuss offer for Robert B. Johnson Building, David Leaker representing.
Oh, we're getting close to the end, aren't we? Commissioners, we've discussed the possible sale of RDJ property since back in, originally discussed in 2018. Attached to the memo is the front sheet of the appraisal we received for $950,000. We also do have a spreadsheet created by Jim Larson back in 2018 that shows the purchase price of the building and then all the maintenance and improvements we've done to the buildings with roof and windows and other similar items. So that totals up to $750,000, the appraisal being at $950,000. We realized and reached out to the county, knowing that they're kind of landlocked in their current location, and to see if they would be interested in the purchase of this building. And some of the advantages of selling to the county is they don't need it immediately, and some of our current renters would have the ability to stay there until they could relocate. So that is one advantage of possibly selling to the county. There are some hurdles we've got to jump through, or hoops we got to jump through. The city of Fargo would have to amend their ordinances, which would allow two government agencies to sell property back and forth without putting it up for public auction. The city has agreed to that, and Eric Johnson, I believe, is currently working on that. Over the last couple of weeks, we have met with representatives from the staff of the county and their president of the county commission. And President Rosted and myself met with those representatives. And they met as a board, they met as a commission, and decided on an offer price to present to us. We presented this at the facilities committee meeting. Their offer price is $600,000 for that building. And so we just wanted to bring it from the facilities to the full commission for further discussion. So I will open it up to any questions or discussions. Some of that, as I touched on, we do currently have a couple staff over there. If we were to sell to the county, they would be able to, office out of there until we start and finish construction of the sports complex, which we would be able to get everybody back together at that time. We do have Red River Human Services that has their program in the basement, along with some other renters that would be allowed to stay until they have a new location. So there are some advantages of working with the county, but I guess staff-wise, we kind of thought maybe if we've got $750,000 into it and it appraised at $950, that maybe the happy medium would be $850. So that's kind of the discussions we're at right now.
Hey, Dave, this is Kevin. One thing to note that Red River Human Services, however, they haven't notified us yet, but it looks like they're building a new building out north of the Robanus volleyball court. So that's another issue that we'll have to deal with as we move forward.
Yeah, and that is correct. We've been working with them a little bit, Dave Beats and I, on a detention retention pond out there. So, I mean, they could possibly have a new home within a year.
Well, I'm not interested in selling the building at $600,000 if it's appraised at $950 and we've already got $750-ish in it. I don't know what it would obtain on the open market, but I don't think we're in a position to sell this building at that offer price.
Well, I need more information. I mean, more information. I mean, what does that $600,000 number mean to me? As we realized real quickly with the Anderson situation, appraisal is just what it is. And so I guess, what was the discussion at facilities that said bring it forward to the full board? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is who's supposed to provide a recommendation, and what is that recommendation? Because throwing a number at me like that and saying, what do you think? That's not my area of expertise.
I think the discussion was that we had an offer that no one was particularly comfortable with, but we thought it was appropriate to present to the entire board.
Sure.
So that.
But I mean, is this like a private situation where we would then come back with a different number, or is this you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is between the county and the park district. Like, didn't they just give us their best number and that was the end, or were they expecting us to come back? I mean, this isn't two private people trying to get the better end of the deal, so.
Well, when we met with the county, it was, they wanted to approach it as, they were looking at this, what we have into the building. And they kept going back to that, well, what do you have into it? And then they wanted to discount because like the windows.
Well, they were considering some of the items like the roof was not an improvement, it was maintenance, and the boiler was maintenance, and you really can't include that. I think Commissioner Rosted made a good point that You know, and he presented it to him as, if I've got $100,000 house and I've spent $50,000 to improve $200,000, why would I sell it less for than $200,000 if that's what it's worth? You know, so.
Yeah, because they tried discounting some of the things as maintenance and not improvements to try and make the number smaller. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. It's what's the market gonna bear? I may take that $100,000 house, put 50 into it and only sell it for 75. Well, that's what the market demands, or that's what the market's gonna pay. That's what it's gonna pay. And, President Peterson basically said, if you can sell it for $1 million, he said, I applaud you, go sell it for $1 million and I'll congratulate you for that. So he was.
Well, I don't know that we're in a position to take a building that's appraised at $950,000 and basically let one entity make us an offer that's 35% below that appraised value and accept it at numbers. So I don't know if the staff is looking to move in the direction of opening it up for bids, or if we're looking to put it on the market, or what it is we're looking to do. But I don't think we're in a position to sell it for $600,000.
Yeah, I think too that, you know, Parker, or the county says that they could see some use for it down the road, but there's no sense of urgency for them right now, particularly in the environment that we're in. I don't see them highly motivated to do anything, so that's part of the reason why we probably got a number like we did. So I'm in agreement. I think that, you know, the only thing we have to think about, and I talked to Dave about this, is we do have like a kind of a cost share on the parking lot. So we have to, if we did sell the property, which would include the parking lot, they put some money into the parking lot, so we'd have to figure out some equitable payoff or you know, give back to them to make them whole. So.
Yeah, I think they had put like, you know, we purchased the home, demoed the home, and they constructed the parking lot for, I think, $75,000. And in talking with an engineer at NBN, that appreciation value on that is probably over 20 years. So there's still about 5 years left on that parking lot, which would be approximately $13,000 if I didn't get my numbers messed up.
So do we have a written agreement regarding that parking lot?
Yeah.
Regarding the parking, basically the agreement just says that we'll purchase the home and demo the home, and then they'll construct the parking lot. And then we'll get a share of the use of the parking lot. I don't think anything in the agreement states that if we were to sell the building or anything like that, is there? I don't think there's anything like that. So that would kind of just be a negotiation on appreciated value. But as I said, from the life of the parking lot, the depreciation, what's left on it, it's about $13,000.
So my question is there anything stating in writing that should we sell the property that we owe them money for some value of what they've invested in the parking lot?
Nothing stated.
So if we decide not to sell, do we need a motion, or do we just,
Would you need a motion for staff to either, I mean, we've tried twice, or we've tried a couple times out of Anderson. We've tried public bid, or we've tried multiple broker listings. So I guess if you wanted us to go one of those directions.
Well, I don't know if we need to be in a hurry to do that, you know. I'm 100% on board with everybody that we're not accepting a $600,000 agreement. Well, let's go back to this value system, and how valuable is it for us to control, you know, the tenant in the basement, and how long they have to get out and move on. How important is it for us to ensure that the staff that's currently in there doesn't have to go until they go. And if they're in no hurry to do anything right now, yet they obviously would like it, because they made an offer, can we just leave it alone for now and potentially revisit it down the road when we have more?
I think what brought it to a head was just, you know, trying to set up, and this happened a couple months ago when we were working on financing for the sports complex. Is this a real number? Is it not a real number? We wanted to kind of get to some conclusion. Is it 950? Is it 750? Is it 600? Or is it more? So, I guess, if you just officially said we're not going to accept the offer, I don't know if that's, they've made an offer. Do we just say we don't want it? Is that, motion for that? And then maybe we just hold tight.
Is it appropriate to counter offer, right? That goes back to my original question. I don't know when two public entities are working together. I thought that they just work out a deal and move forward as opposed to.
Well, the problem is, you really can't sit there and negotiate because it's kind of one commissioner with another commissioner, and you need to bring each offer to the full board, so.
I guess my sense of direction on this would be is to revisit this in 2 or 3 months. We'll have a better understanding of where we are with the sports complex. There's no, and I understand the pressure Tyson's under. He wants a number so he can run his formulas and see where we're at. So, but we've delayed. I think the sports complex is delayed a certain period of time now before we get. So we now have some newfound time that we didn't have 3 months ago when we first had this conversation. So that'd be my suggestion to hold off on maybe September-ish. Revisit it.
So we appreciate the offer, and we're just, we're gonna
take no action.
We're gonna, we're just not for a while. We're just gonna. We have to figure out. I mean, ultimately, the reason it's potentially up for sale is because we're going out to the sports complex. Well, Ryan's got to redefine for us when we're going to be out there. So, no, teasing. But yeah, hopefully they don't take any offense to it. But I thought in original discussions potentially with them that they were asking what we paid because they were trying to get to that number for us. And that's significantly less than, what we were into it, it should be 7.5. That's significantly less than that. So for now, it's just hold steady.
Okay, all right. Last item, number 18, board to consider for approval the amendment to donation of annual leave policy number 235 related to COVID-19. Diane Jones, and I think she's on the line. Diane, you're the last one. Your only item. Sorry that we had to make you wait.
That's okay. Good evening, commissioners. I've gone and we've updated the policy 235 to make a couple of changes in order to accommodate individuals who may need to be home for additional periods of time due to potentially needing to quarantine for COVID-19. If somebody's waiting for a test, it can be several days. If somebody lives with an individual who has COVID-19, they need to be home for the entire time the individual is sick. And then once the individual's been released from by the healthcare provider, they have to then wait an additional 14 days. So this can add up pretty quickly for employees. And the FFCRA only covers 80 hours, a max of 80 hours between now and the end of the year. So it's possible someone may need to stay home for more than one quarantine period during that time. So the option of allowing employees to donate time to other individuals who may need it, after reviewing that policy, made a couple of revisions to it so that we would allow more individuals to be eligible for the donation of annual leave. Changed it from employees to had to be here for a year to have to be here with 30 days. And added additional COVID reasons that are listed in the FFCRA, Family First Coronavirus Response Act, for reasons that they can be out. I would have these amendments end at the same time that the Families First Act expires. But this is to help new employees who've maybe already taken leave and are out of time and just need some additional help from their coworkers with donations. So I am requesting that we update policy 235 to reflect these changes.
Diane, does this apply to part-time, full-time, temporary, seasonal, permanent?
No, the donation policy is only for full-time employees.
And I'm
I did not
assuming that.
change that part. We did not
Sure.
amend that part of the donation policy.
Sure. Just looking for a little clarification. And then the recipient of the donated hours would receive it at their rate of pay. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And not in all circumstances, but likely in most circumstances, the donor would be receiving a higher rate of pay than the recipient. Would that be a fair assessment? Or maybe not necessarily.
Often, it's possible, but it's hard to say.
Sure. I mean, to have 200 hours of leave, you have to have been around a while. And so for a newer employee, they likely would obviously, maybe not, but I guess this goes for any employee. So I guess there is no set guarantee one way or the other with that.
I think I'm not sure what you were.
Never mind. I kind of worked myself through the answer myself. So, and this would, you mentioned that this would last until the Family First Coronavirus Response Act expires.
Correct. Currently, that act is scheduled to expire at the end of 2020.
Okay. And then we would look at it further if necessary, I'm guessing.
If necessary to make this permanent or to make additional, yes, I would bring it to the board again at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, obviously, at the beginning of the year, COVID wasn't a thing. It clearly is a thing now, and it definitely fits within our shared leave agreement as far as I'm concerned. So I'll move to approve the amendment to donation of annual leave policy 235 related to COVID-19 as presented.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Thanks, Diane. Thanks for hanging in there till the bitter end. Appreciate it. Jeff, call the vote.
Commissioner Dawson?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch?
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted?
Yes, the motion passes. That concludes today's meeting.
Adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.